this is the Conquering Hill podcast, and I'm your host, Nicholas Gagnier. And today I have a very special guest. His name is Rodney Whittenberg. He's an Emmy Award winning composer and an Emmy nominated film producer. He is also a multi instrumentalist, audio engineer, sound designer, music producer, writer, podcast producer, film director, editor, producer, and educator. Rodney is the founder of Melodyvision, a full service media production company that serves as a platform for him to bring fresh perspectives to each client and project while value adding that results in a creative solutions for often complex problems. Rodney has produced and directed the award winning documentary Voices of Ages and produced and co directed the Emmy nominated Portraits of Professional Caregivers. Their passion, their plan, and the award winning documentary Angels and Saints, Arrows and Awe. He has co directed more than 2 dozen short experimental documentaries, many of which have won numerous film festivals. He has also worked as a freelance segment producer for HBO, WYBE, and WHYY. As a film composer, Rodney has written music for over 34 films and TV shows, as well as countless dance performances. His projects include Codename, Aeolon, Anthony Bourdain's A Cook's Tour, PBS's POV documentary The Camden 28, The Spanish American War, co written with Time for Three for the History Channel, and horror film classics Infested and Return to Sleepaway Camp. He's received a regional Emmy for his musical score for the TV documentary Mother Dots Philadelphia and a Best Sound Design Award at the Terra Film Festival for the movie Toll Taker. He's also directed an orchestral film Shoots for Beethoven to Beijing, which is nominated for the Library of Congress's Ken Burns Prize. Rodney has taught music and audio production courses at Lincoln University, University of the Arts, Drexel University, and Philadelphia Community College, as well as graduate level film courses at Rosemont College and an audio production course for animation at Jefferson University. He has been a great lecturer at Temple University, the University of Pennsylvania, and Franklin and Marshall College, and he has co written curriculum for the Southeast Delco School District. Rodney has had an amazing career. Wow, Rodney, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first off, Rodney, I really want to know, when did you first pick up that first instrument? What age were you?
Oh boy, I started. I always joke. My mom used to tell me that I would crawl into the kitchen floor and pull out all the pots and pans in the kitchen and start banging on them and making up little stories even before I could talk. So I don't know if that's my first instrument, but
I would say
the
yes.
first instrument, I guess, I started taking keyboard lessons when I was around 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And my first love was the synthesizer. Believe it or not, like making weird electronic sounds coming out of a little box.
Really cool. And so, growing up, what kind of music did your parents or family listen to kind of maybe inspired you a little bit?
Well, around the house in the early days, oh God, when I was a little kid, my dad was really into Ray Charles and Sam Cooke and um, Motown. I remember jumping around the the living room listening to Heat Wave. It was like I was obsessed with that song by Martha and the Vandellas. So it's like, wow, this is the coolest song. And very early on, I discovered AM radio, and that was my probably biggest influence. Although my dad really wanted to be a musician and songwriter, and he was always going around the house making up songs, like, and I think the pivotal point for me was he had made up this song called "Practice Makes Perfect," and he talked about it all the time. But my dad didn't know how to play an instrument or know anything about music, so he looked in the phone book and found someone who was a composer, arranger, and we went over this person's house one Sunday, and my view of the world changed that day. I did not know that you could have a house full of musical instruments as opposed to furniture and um, guess this was like a bunch of young guys who were probably going to University Arts or Temple for music or something, and they had a like all their musical instruments were all over the living room and dining room, and you went up the spiral staircase, and there was this big reel-to-reel tape player. And the guy said to my dad, "Sing your song into the microphone," and that's what my dad did. And then the guy said to me, "Hey, do you want to say something into the mic?" And I did, and I kind of was hooked. I was like, "Oh, this is I can hear my voice back. I can record things. This is pretty awesome. I like this." And when I got back to my parents' house, I got out my dad's cassette recorder from underneath the bed, and I just went around recording everything in the house. I was like, that day, I was just hooked. I was like, "Oh, what can I had a dog named Gutty. I went outside and I was trying to record Gutty and recorded my little baby sister in her crib crying. I was, just went crazy with it."
That's amazing. It's weird where we can look back at a certain point in our life and pinpoint everything that changed from that pivotal moment, like you said, like something changed inside of you once you realize, I can hear my voice. I'm recording something. This is amazing, and then the rest of life kind of just evolves from that. Obviously there's other things along the way, but it's like that was the moment. That was the moment that changed everything. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So as growing up as a kid and you started, playing with a keyboard and synthesizer, were you interacting with other people that did you form your own
So
band along the way
I
a few
started my
times?
first band when I was 12, and jumping go I think so much of this goes back to my dad. He just exposed me to so many things. When I was about, I guess it was 5th grade, he came home. He worked at Sears. He was a salesman selling air conditioning refrigerators at Sears, but he came home, um, and handed me this stack of books that, back in the day, Sears would offer correspondence courses, and this was a course in basic electricity. And he just said, "Here, this is for you. You can do it or not." And I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." And I was in 4th or 5th grade at the time, and I just became obsessed with these books and took the whole course and filled out all the answers at the end. And he sent it in, and I got an A in basic electricity, and that went to basic electronics, and that went to home organ repair. So by the time I was 12, I had built a synthesizer from scratch. Like, it
Wow.
just made all these crazy noises and sounds and stuff. And that's what I used in my first band. And my first band was called Rip Cage. It's like crazy. And we oops. And we just played covers of the day. We played like Chicago, and we tried to play Ballroom Blitz from the Suite, and we played oh, we played Color My World, because I also sort of played the flute, like kind of, sort of. And yeah, and that was the beginning of being in bands from 12 to graduation from high school. That's all I was obsessed with, was just playing in, after school, going to my friend's house and practicing, because I always had to go to the house of the guy who had the drums.
Yeah,
So we would
laying
go to
that
the
rhythm down, right?
yeah, well, because my parents weren't going to let me have a drum set, so um, and just and tinkering. I mean, I always had like even from the early days, I had some semblance of a recording studio, even if it was like an old. Well, at the time, it would have been like, I think for 1 year for my birthday or something, I got a Super Scope or a Marantz cassette recorder, and that became the center of the studio. And then there was some secondhand electronic shop that was around the corner near me, and I remember going there and buying two really old reel-to-reel tape decks for like $5 a piece or something from this guy who had them in this like junk shop. And I brought them home in my wagon. I had tied a wagon to the bike and rode the bike home. I had to go do two trips because it was in the neighboring town, and I had to do two trips because the reel to reels were too big to fit in the wagon. I couldn't fit both of them in, so I went and got one, and the next day I went back and got the other one. And so I had these two reel to reels and this cassette, and I would just make up music and stories and add sound design and sound effects and stuff in my parents' basement. And when friends of mine would come over who I was in a band with, or I'd bring a little cassette of like, "Hey, can we try this with the band?" or something like that. And yeah, so that's how it kind of started.
Wow, really cool. So you're the founder of
Mhm.
Melodyvision. So where did that come from? I mean, obviously you were experimenting and playing music, from an early age.
So,
At that point, where did that dream come from, Melodyvision?
well, the dream was always, I mean, there were many dreams. There was the dream of living a creative life, which I think was the meta of it all. But trying to figure out what to do and how to make it work was challenging. I mean, there was a path I was down of just, oh, well, you're a musician, so you be in bands. So I was in bands, and I want to be a songwriter, so I wrote songs. At what was, I guess, 17 or 18, I saw a jingle by accident. I was in a store and I said, I heard them over these two guys who owned the place, who knew me since I was a little kid, because this was where I would go to buy records and stuff, and I overheard them saying they were going to do a commercial on this new thing called MTV, and I'm like, something in me, and I think it's probably my dad in me being a salesman. I said to these guys, "Hey, you need a jingle for your commercial?" And I'd never written a jingle before. I was a kid. I was 17. I didn't know anything, but they're like, "Get away from me. What are you talking about, Rod?" And I kept bugging them. I kept saying, "No, no, I can write you a jingle." Never written a jingle before in my life, but I kept saying I could do it. And they finally relented and said, "Yeah, well, we need the name of the store and the phone number and this and that." And, I'm like, "Okay." And I wrote it down on a little piece of paper, and I went home and I wrote, I don't know, maybe 12 or 10 or 12 30 seconds songs that the lyrics were all about the store. And I did it in every single style I could think of. I did one that sounded like Prince, and I did one that sounded like Frank Zappa, and I did a heavy metal one. I did one that sounded like Pat Benatar, and I just was just going through everything I could think of musical style. And also did a rap one. And a couple days later, I went back to the store and told them, so here it goes. And they were blown away, and they said, "What do you need?" And I said, "I need to go in a real recording studio to record this." And so they put me in the studio, and there it was. And then the thing went on the air on MTV for like 3 or 4 years. It was on all the time, and it won a bunch of awards and stuff back then. So there was always this thing of like, oh, music production is a thing, but I didn't know how to actually do it. I mean, like how to get into that world, because I was still a kid. And I remember going to an advertising agency, but I was dressed up like a rock star when I went. Like I was wearing my punk rock like studded shirt cut off, and like my leather pants, and these Doc Martin boots, and I had like really big spiky mohawk with like this hoop earring, and I'm like, "Yeah, I can write commercials for you." I didn't know that I thought, "Oh, well, they're going to want a creative person, so I better look the part. I better look creative." And I didn't know I'm walking into this corporate environment where it's like all button, like people wear suits and ties and all that sort of stuff. So it took me a minute to figure it out. But through my 20s, I was in bands, played in lots of bands. I had my own band. We were pretty successful for a while. And at the end of that, I decided I didn't want to be in bands anymore, but I still wanted to do this. So I started Melodyvision. That's a long way of saying that's how I got there. But the spark of starting Melodyvision goes back to me selling that first jingle. It was like, oh, I could do something creative and make money for my skills and ability and talent without having to do the traditional being in a band thing, And right before I started Melodyvision, I went out and did a bunch of informational interviews with people in the Philadelphia region who were already doing it. Like, I went over. Had a friend that worked at NFL Films. I went over there, interviewed the composers there. I went around the different studios and talked to all the studio owners. Some of them I knew from being in bands, and some of them I didn't. Um, and then I went and found some independent guys, like guys who were just doing it in their house, and asked them how did they get started? How do they do this? And most were amazingly giving with their information, and that led me to start Melodyvision. And the name actually comes from a good friend of mine, Joe Augustine. He's the one who came up with the name. He was an A&R guy. He was a drummer in my band for a long time, but he became a really successful record company guy, and now he manages film composers.
Now, when's the last time you listened to that jingle?
Uh, the last time I listened to the jingle was just the other day, because someone was asking me. There was a post on Facebook. Someone was asking, what was the first thing you got paid for that you ever did as a musician? And I put a little bit of that story up there because I, I, when they asked me how much I wanted, I just thought of the biggest number I could think of. So I said $2,000, and they're like, sure. And I didn't know back then you could get paid 15 grand, like 10 grand for writing a jingle. You could get paid a lot of money for writing a jingle back then. But I didn't know. I was like, again, I was a kid.
Right, right. Well, that's really cool. So, now that you're in Melodyvision and you've created this vision for what your talents and your passion is for, how did you start incorporating, you know, bringing people on to maybe help you along the way to kind of get it on its feet, or how did
It
you
was
share your talents with people?
So Melody Vision was going the vision of Melody Vision was two things. I wanted to be able to work on music and film, and I had decided I didn't even know what a podcast was, but the idea of an audio program was like that wasn't broadcasted kind of was there. Like I was always making up little short stories and stuff. But the main idea was that, well, if I have a company and I'm working for people, they'll pay me, and that'll give me the resources to have the equipment and all the gear I want to be able to work on my own stuff. That second part really hasn't happened yet. It's
Hmm.
been 30 years. It's very difficult to find time to work on my own stuff, but um, working on other people's projects has been pretty amazing. And it started out very slowly of word of mouth. And again, I feel very lucky that I had a dad who was a salesman, because so much of what who he was and what he did just was in me. So, I mean, there are some things I did I still can't believe I did. Like I made up Melodyvision pens, and I would just hand them out everywhere I went. Like, hey, would you like a pen? Hey? Like it's just like crazy. And if there's anything I could find that would make me the separate me from everybody else, I would do it. So instead of having regular business cards, I had CD business cards that had samples of music that either I recorded or wrote on them. And then I was always looking for niches that were interesting to me, but maybe there weren't other people doing what I did there. And one of the places I found was dance, and I love dance and everything from ballet to modern. And I found a home there. In the very early days of Melody Vision, I ended up just kind of being the composer and production person for Temple University's dance department. It was not an official kind of thing, but it was like sort of this unofficial official relationship that I would come in and do workshops with all the dancers, and then they'd all hire me to work on their pieces. And what I remember, one of the first pieces I wrote, I got $50 for writing this little 6-minute piece of sort of world influenced electronic music. And it was the coolest thing to work with this choreographer over the phone. I remember doing like a little clandestine drop off where I met her on a corner and I handed her the CD and she gave me $50. I don't know. It might have looked like we were doing a drug deal or
Drug
something.
deal, right?
But and then to go to the performance, and there's the music being pumped out of the PA system, and there's this dance performance happening, and it was very cool. So I did that for a while. I worked on a lot of theater. It was all with the goal of wanting to score film, but nobody was going to give me. Well, the truth is, a amazing composer who mentored me, a guy named John Hodian, gave me the opportunity to score something very, very early on, and I was awful. I mean, I remember him saying very nicely, "I'll give you an E for effort," because it was just I didn't know what I was doing. But he gave me some suggestions, and I just did them. One was finding places to write music for, and one was was dance. And then my recording studio was in my apartment. I mean, I took a bedroom of my apartment and turned it into a studio, and literally had clients that would sing in the bathroom or the hallway. It was like, just trying to make it work any way I could. And just kept looking for interesting projects to work on. So one of my other passions is working with kids and introducing them to art and music, and the power of all that, and filmmaking and all those things. And So I ended up working also throughout the 90s as an I ran a nonprofit that was an anti-violence, anti-drug program where we would do murals and albums and songs and all sorts of things with kids as community-based art projects. So I was another, and Melodyvision would a lot of times be uh, the nonprofit would work with Melodyvision to do some of the production stuff. So that was another way that the company got going. And so by it took a good 10 years to get to the point where I was actually getting TV shows and movies and work, and when it happened it kind of just exploded.
Snowballed,
That's
right? All
crazy.
happened at once, right?
Mhm.
Well, that's truly amazing. You put all that hard work into something that you love. Along the way, it might not seem. Sometimes it might not seem like it's actual work because you love it, but
Mhm.
you're putting the time and effort in. And looking back on it, like, wow, I did all that, and that was a lot of hard work. But when you're in the
Yeah.
middle of it, like that's your passion. So for me, when I'm putting my love into something, it doesn't seem like work, even though I know it is. But it's like I love this. This is what I'm here for, right? This is what I'm meant to
Mhm.
do in this world while I'm living and breathing. Another
Mhm.
thing you're involved with is called Healthy Newsworks. Can you
Mhm.
explain to the audience what is that?
Healthy Newsworks is a nonprofit that teaches journalism to young kids, particularly inner city youth, um, elementary and middle school, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth graders, and they teach them how to do real journalism, how to research and do interviews. They've been around for maybe I think they're coming up on their 20th anniversary. I think it's a big one for them. And historically, they've done newspapers. So many things that were in schools when I was a kid are now gone, and one of them is a school newspaper. And so Healthy News Work started by sort of supplementing that. And the other thing is they do it with a health bent. So it's always around issues of how to be healthy, whether that's physically or emotionally. And so I started working with them during COVID because they could no longer be in the schools, and the big thing was they were trying to figure out how to do their end of year event. And one of their board members recommended me to the executive director, and we started talking and came up with this idea, and I was able to execute it, and we were able to do. I was able to put together their gala as an online, or not gala, but end of year event as an online film that the kids made, and basically it was the beginnings of a news program, like a news magazine kind of thing. And then the following year, we made a real news magazine where the kids were dressed up as reporters, and the cool thing about Healthy Newsworks that I love is the kids interview real people, like they're interviewing like in this one we did last year, they interviewed Jordan Malata, who's a real football player, and he talked very openly about some emotional challenges he has. And they interviewed the woman who was head of the psychiatric department at Children's Hospital, who like the next day was testifying to Congress about the emotional impacts of COVID, and she gave a shout out to the kids who had interviewed her the day before, like
You probably got tougher
on
questions from
and
her then, right? From the
yeah,
kids, right?
and she was reporting on what some of the kids were even asking her, the questions that they had come up with. So, but that's Healthy Newsworks, and the film that we made last year won the San Diego Children's Film Festival, and I was really shocked and very happy about that. That the kids' work was being recognized. But and this year we did a film on eco environmentalism, or what's called eco anxiety, and it's all which I bet a lot of people are feeling right now with this heat wave we're having over the summer. Um, and so yeah, that's what Healthy Newsworks is, and I'm really happy to be part of it, and introducing the kids to my passion of telling stories with sound and audio and video and film.
Yeah, I think storytelling using those tools of audio and music, I think inherently it enters people's brains and hearts a little bit easier, right? When especially,
Mhm.
you know, we learn about our ABCs, right? It's a song,
Yeah.
right? That first song,
Yeah.
majority of kids, it's the ABCs, but it's in a song, so we remember it. So going back to the jingle, you're trying to sell something, you know,
Yeah.
it's in a musical form, you know. So I
Mhm.
think that's a great way to spread a message, especially, you know, a positive thing like Healthy Newsworks is doing, and that's really cool that they won that festival award in
Mhm.
San Diego. And what else are they working on this particular year? What's their main jump
So
out? You said
the
eco,
project we just did, for this end of year event, and I'm gonna be, editing it over the summer, we did, like a live morning show. And
really, that's
so,
cool.
we 2 of the kids, well, 4 of the kids were, interviewers, sort of like the I guess the Hoda and Kathy kind of interviewers off to one side of the stage, and we did, a live interview with, boy, I'm gonna forget people's names, there's so many names, but we did a live interview with someone who is an expert, um, on the impact of trauma, and then the kids interviewed someone in the room, that we had someone there that they did, and it was just set up just like a morning show, and then on the other side of the stage was the news desk, and so we opened up the event where the kids were basically doing the news in front of a live audience, and then we had pre-recorded segments that they would go to that we had shot over the course of the year with different schools that were involved in the program, and that's all going to be edited together as sort of a morning show, like the Healthy Newsworks, morning show at night or something like that. I haven't figured out what I'm going to call it yet, but so that's the thing. And then next year we're going to do it again, and hopefully we're going to be in a couple more schools and open it up to. I forget what the subject is for this coming year. I should know that, but it'll be something around the kids learning about something to do with health, and
Awesome.
yeah.
Now, all these schools they're all based in Pennsylvania. Are you trying to
Yeah,
go
we're
nationwide?
For right now, they're all located in the Philadelphia area, but if you go to healthynewsworks.org, I believe is the address, you can find out more about it and ways of bringing Healthy Newsworks to your community or school.
That's really inspiring. It's how do you balance that? You know, like with Melodyvision, I know you're still working with music and audio and creating films, but like, how do you balance all of that together? I mean, it's just one
Well,
big work day for you in a sense, or
one of the things I love, and it drives some people crazy that they don't understand it, that how I can work this way, but I love the idea that I get to work on different things throughout the course of the day, and as long as I'm disciplined and tenacious, keep
right?
going.
Keep grinding, keep going.
I can, you know, work on Healthy Newsworks in the morning, and I can work on the documentary that I'm producing and directing in the afternoon, and then the next day I'll have someone come in and we're working on their album. And I think for me, that variety of different types of creative projects and different inputs and going into different worlds is what I like to call it. It keeps my mind and brain fresh.
Yeah,
I'm not doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing kind of, but not doing the
on
same
a
thing at
different
the same
angle,
time
yeah,
every
different
day.
angle. Yeah, you're
And
kind of
I find that so uh not only invigorating but also enlightening. I just learned so much stuff from the people I'm working with, and so many times, so many times, I'm working on something over here with this person or group, and it leads to the light bulb for this project over here, and and there have been times where even there's well, one of my favorite stories I love. Um, in nine well, I guess that was a long time ago, but in 1999, early 2000, I guess it was, somewhere around there, I was on the board of the Grammys, and I was at a party, and one of the Grammy board members introduced me to their wife, and I'm like, "Oh, hi!" And literally, we had I don't know, 30-second, maybe a minute and a half conversation. She ran a nonprofit that worked with kids that worked with seniors in nursing homes, and they had just received a big grant and from their parent organization, the Presbyterian Foundation, and they were looking for something interesting to do, and they were trying to get attention for these projects they were doing. They were doing a lot of innovative things with in nursing homes, and no one was writing about it. They couldn't get any attention. And I said, just off the top of my head, I go, "Oh, did you ever think of doing an intergenerational animation?" And she goes, "What's that?" I go, "Well, we could interview the kids. We get a group of kids, a group of seniors, and put them together, and the seniors will share their life story, and the kids will write it down and then tell it back to the seniors, and then collectively they'll draw some pictures, and we'll make them move on the screen, and then we'll take that story and turn it into a song." They're like, "You can do all that?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's easy." And so I wrote her a proposal, and the next day, literally the next day, and within 24 hours, she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we're planning to do this. So, and this is just crazy. So I'm in my studio, and a lot of times when I'm doing like just technical or stupid stuff, I'll have the radio or TV on in the background. And HBO was doing this thing about this new program they were doing at the time called 30 by 30 Kid Flicks. So I'd literally go in the other room and get on the phone, and I called HBO and got um, the vice president's assistant on the phone, and they said, "Why don't you come up for a meeting?" And so the next Tuesday, I'm in New York, and they're asking me what I'm doing, and I brought all this stuff that I had made with kids from the Banner Project and the Project Respect, which was the nonprofit I was telling you about earlier. And they said, "Yeah, we'll license all this stuff from you." And I said, "Well, we'll just give that money to charity. But here," they go, "What are you working on now?" "Oh, we're just doing an intergenerational animation." "We want that. When's it going to be done?" "It's not going to be done till till the fall." And they're like, "Great, let's we want to air that too." And so here was one client. Here's a new client. I put them both together, and HBO became a sponsor of the project that New Cortland was doing, and that
That's really
happens
amazing.
all the time. Like it's constantly this sort of thing where the energy is out there, and it all just kind of connects when
It
you
all connects.
start putting
It's
it in
all connects
motion.
like a big spider web, you know?
Yeah.
That's really cool. It's amazing to hear some of these stories, how things like, your passion for helping kids, or you randomly meet someone and it all comes together. That's just like the universe just working with you because you truly love what you're doing, you know?
Hmm.
That's amazing to hear. Um, Looking back on your career, what are you I mean, I'm sure you're proud about many things, but what are you most proud about?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Uh, I don't know if there's a most. I mean, I'm I oh wow. Hmm. I think the thing I'm proudest of is that I found a way to use my whatever skill, talent, abilities I've developed or have or were lucky enough to be born with, blessed with, use all that to um I think and hope in some ways to help other people. And I don't mean that other people need help, but to to present opportunities for other people to do the same, to be able to follow their passion, their dreams, um, and and um, and hopefully, I've done things that have made the world better. I hope. Um, I, I I often think of a story a friend of mine told me about my dad, and I think this kind of sums up the answer to that question. I think because I'm proud of the fact that there's things that I think I've affected that I don't even know, I'm not even aware of. But a friend of mine told me this story. I invited him to come in and speak to my class at Drexel, and during a break we were talking, and it turns out that he grew up in West Philly, and a really really poor part of West Philly, and really rough part. Um, and my dad worked at the Sears, which was at the 63rd Street, which was in West Philly, and this was in the late '60s. And the guy was telling me how when he was a kid, everyone on his block, when anybody was going to Sears, all the kids wanted to go, and they wanted to go for two reasons. One is they wanted to go into the toy department and look around, and the other is they wanted to see the black man in the suit, and because they didn't ever see a black person wearing a suit, and that person was my dad. And when he's telling me the story, I go, you're talking about my dad. He goes, no, really? I go, yeah, my dad was the sold refrigerators and air conditioners, and he was, when you came in that back door right next to the toy department was the refrigerators and air conditioners. That's where it was back in the 60s. So, and you know, who knows how many people that affected or inspired. I mean, that was just one story that I happened to find out randomly from someone who I kind of knew, that I invited into my class, and we were just talking, and they started telling me this story. And I think that's what we all do. We have no idea how the things we do affect other people. Um, and I think that's one of the things I'm proud of, because I keep doing things, so I have a feeling that there is some some effect somewhere.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful story, Rodney. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
Well,
welcome.
Rodney, it was a wonderful having you on the podcast today. Can you tell the audience where they can find you and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at melodyvision.com. And you the phone number and all that information is there. And my email address, if you want to reach out, is rodney@melodyvision.com. Very simple, very easy. And if you're looking for Healthy Newsworks, I think I said healthynewsworks.org, but it might be healthynewsworks.com. And I'm going to check that really, really quickly um, while I'm here.
No, it is .org.
Oh, it is .org. Cool. So yeah, you can check out Healthy Newsworks there, and yeah,
Awesome,
that's how you
awesome.
can find me.
Well, keep up the great work, Rodney. Truly inspiring what you've done over your career and what you're doing right now with all your passions. I look forward to following you along, and I'll be in touch, my friend. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and thank you for doing this podcast,
I,
and keep conquering that hill.
I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Bye bye.
thanks. Okay, bye.
And if you would like to support the podcast, please visit Amazon.com and search Conquering Hill, 50 writing prompts for a dream chaser. And also visit Etsy.com and search Conquering Hill for all our gear. Thank you so much.